Dr. Adam Mathews is on the show with me today. Dr. Adam Mathews is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed professional counselor and owner of Mathews Counseling. He has over 15 years of experience working with couples and families from a wide diversity of backgrounds. He teaches on couple relationships and family as an adjunct professor for both North Central University and Pfeiffer University, as well as through numerous speaking engagements. He's the co-host of the popular podcast Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy and the president of the North Carolina Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. He's also an American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy clinical fellow and supervisor. That's a tongue twister. He and his wife Rebecca are celebrating 14 years of marriage and enjoy spending time with their 3 children, Lily, Rhea, and Brennan. I made it through.
That's awesome.
It's an impressive bio. Adam.
it's a too-wordy bio is what it is.
I'm exhausted. I'm ready to wrap this episode up.
Awesome.
It's wearing me out. I used to not do intros at all, and then someone told me that I was an idiot for not, and now I'm kind of like, man, out of breath before we even start.
I used to not write bios at all, and then somebody told me I had to have one. So
yeah, that's how that goes. They're like, send over your bio, and you're like, yeah,
I should
do
have
that. I'll have my assistant write it for me.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, I wanted to have you on just because you're awesome, and that's pretty much the reason.
well, thanks. It's a good reason to be on, I suppose.
Maybe fill folks in on a bit more about kind of who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, so I'm in Raleigh. That's where I'm kind of located, but we've moved around a bit. I didn't start off wanting to do therapy. I was going to work with teenagers in some nonprofit capacity. That was what I was wanting to do. And then found out that I didn't. I got fired from a job that I had when I was living in Dallas, and this was kind of my fallback. But I also realized that I didn't have the knowledge that I needed to be able to help in the right way. I was just seeing a lot of problems and issues that were just beyond the knowledge that I had at the time. And so I went back to school, and I just kind of fell in love with it and just kept going in school. That's where I met my wife. So we were both actually therapists.
And what's that like?
Not as easy as most people think it is. It's fun in the aspects that we worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
But when we were dating, during our dating time, that's when we were in school. And so we were sitting through things like sex therapy class and conflict resolution classes and things like that. Try not to like over apply it to us and what we were going through at the time. So it's fun because we know what to do, but we often like have to check ourselves from doing therapy on each other. That's her.
Oh yeah.
That's my wife's common line is, don't do therapy on me right now. I'm not a client.
Of course. So did you ever have to do like, in some graduate schools, the students act as therapist and client. Did you all ever have to do that with each other?
Yeah, we did it a couple times before we started dating. Then after we were dating, we finally let everybody know that's not something that we should really. It's not.
You're like, hey, you shouldn't pair us together.
Yes,
it's gonna get too real.
Yeah, that's right. We did our internship. One of the internships we did together was at a psych hospital, and so that was an intense experience for us. And we finally told them, like, you got to stop that. Like, we just need to do everything separate. We just need to do everything separately for a little while. So that's basically it. And then I did start working at a nonprofit early on, and it was a good experience. I worked with kids that were in a jail. Basically, they were juveniles that were transitioning back out of from being in jail to being back home.
Okay.
That was pretty intense work,
Yeah.
and then in between that, during that, I tried to started and stopped several private practices until we moved here about 5 years ago, and that's when we were able to kind of really dig in, and good things started happening for us that way. So, yeah, I mean that's basically the journey. Nothing super flashy. It's just kind of a lot of hard work, a lot of late hours, things like that.
It's funny because I never knew that you at one point didn't want to be a therapist or were heading down a different path. And I think this is a compliment. You strike me as the kind of guy that's like a natural born therapist.
Oh, thank you.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, some people that kind of have that they just never stop following that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it was more that, I mean, it's a similar story to a lot of therapists. Like, people would come to me for help. Like I would be the kind of the one that people would talk to, in life. But I never I always thought of therapist as, more the psychiatrist, more like, doctors, and, had my own stigmas around therapy, that it was, something that was only for crazy people, or was really like the psych hospital mentality of what therapy was. And so when I discovered that it wasn't, and that was through just some experience of it, honestly, through my own therapy experience, realized what it could actually look like, it was much more attractive to me.
Well, a psych hospital is a very intense first impression of our field. That's actually where I started off. When I was an undergraduate, I was working there like evenings and weekends, and I mean, you're seeing the worst of it. You're seeing the worst situations and true mental illness and psychoses and really intense stuff. Where if you're learning to be a therapist at the same time, you're going, how am I going to sit and listen and understand and validate, you know, someone who is seeing things on the wall, or, you know, hearing voices, and I'm just one of those voices. But so it's intense, but also if you can do that work and
absolutely
kind of hang with it, you know, it helps you kind of, you know, get ready for other difficult jobs, and then eventually other jobs that aren't as difficult in that same way, maybe.
Yeah, I think therapy outside of like private practice, to me, really is the easiest form of therapy, or what I do, because like the other experiences that I've had were like intensive in-home community-based things like that, and they were so intense, and we had to figure out how to do that well. And if you can stay, I tell my supervisees all the time that are working in that, like, if you can stay in that for 3 or 4 years and really learn how to do it well, there's really no therapy that you can't do. It does make you a better therapist, I think.
It really does. Sure. And it's funny. We must have worked all the same jobs, because I worked in probation, I worked in adoption and foster care system, and in San Francisco was doing a lot of community-based work. And at the time, I think I started to resent it and get burnt out. And then it wasn't until I left it fully and was in private practice that I became really grateful for what it had taught me. Because the other thing is learning to work with severe mental illness is intense, and in that system, but then learning to work with clients in the context of their environment and system, and getting your kind of sharpening some social work skills is not my forte, but was so essential, because I was out there in the communities, you know, working with clients in their homes, in their schools, in the jails, and seeing, wow, these, you know, there's a lot of factors at play here that I wouldn't have otherwise see if they just come in for 50 minutes of therapy in my comfy office with my, you know, cool artwork on the wall. Yeah.
I think it also teaches you how to be creative. Like, if you can and think outside the box, and it's, it takes therapy. I mean, I've done therapy in a closet before, like a storage closet, because that was the only place we were able to do it. I had to, I had to regroup from therapy after the middle of a fight in the jail, and that one that I got hit in. I've done therapy in people's homes where I sat in cat pee and had to do the whole session. I had nowhere else to go in the house and
Yeah.
things like that. A client one time had a squirrel as a pet. I like to run around, like things like
Casual.
that. Yeah, they were super casual about it.
You're like, what's his
And
name? Does Mr. Squirrel like to participate in this session?
yeah, yeah. I mean, so things like that. I mean, like I
Yeah.
think you have to be creative at what's going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And so, I think that forces you to do that. But you're right. Like at some point, I was like, this is too much. When I got out of it, but now that I look back on it, I'm really, really thankful for that experience.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I've got my own list of bizarre places I did therapy. A lot of it was just in the car. Either the car was stopped, or more likely I was driving across the Golden Gate Bridge or something with a client or a teenager in the car. And they're wanting out. They're not wanting to have anything to do with me.
It's often the case that kind of work.
We find ways to make it work, or
that's right.
Grab a meal. One of the probably the kind of funniest one for me looking back on it was I was with working with a family that they were really hard to engage with, and I understood that and was kind of respecting that. And eventually I went over to their house, and one of the guys was giving haircuts in the front yard. He was like putting a trash bag over people and just lining people up and just giving free haircuts. And I needed one. And also I don't think he had ever cut my my kind of hair. And so the other thing that he didn't know, this was like exposure therapy for me, because I have a weird like fear of haircuts. I think because my mom used to take me to horrible places growing up, like JCPenney or like a family friend who like kind of knew how to cut hair. And so as a kid, I always was the kid going back to school with like the crooked bangs and the just a block of hair, like a chunk of hair out missing in the wrong place. Like I always hated it. So the guy I don't think he knew how big of a deal this was for me, but he cut my hair. I looked horrible, but it helped the relationship.
Oh yeah, man. You did what you had to do. You did whatever it took. That's
clients where they are, quite literally.
That's right, man.
And get a haircut.
That's awesome. I bet they loved you after that. They were
really
like
did.
So like yeah.
They really did.
You weren't afraid to just join them and jump right in there. That's totally amazing, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if that went far. I ate a lot of food that I was really scared of.
Same.
That was probably the fear, because I'm very picky. I'm a picky eater, so I was I struggled with that. But when they offered, that was the sign that you were in, when clients would offer you food like that they had made, because it was it's in the South. It's really disrespectful if you don't eat the food that somebody made for you. So yeah, that's fun times, man. That's good. It's good. I could tell therapy stories all day long.
Oh yeah.
From that period of life, because they are unending.
They really are. Yeah, I was doing community work and I was with one client, and we saw another client out in the community, and they started kind of fighting over me.
Oh, so they
like, this is my therapist. No, this is my therapist. I'm like, God.
See, like confidentiality in that case, it just goes out the window. It doesn't matter. But I think like some people that haven't done that work, they're so fearful of that. But it's like that's just happening all over the place. Like we had cousins and aunts and uncles and friends just busting. We were doing therapy in people's living rooms, and so like people would just be coming in and going all the time. And they would just they'd be like, oh, this is my therapist. Like there was no qualms about that kind of stuff. Like it was just all over the place. It was kind of like guerrilla warfare, like type therapy of like just using whatever you could find, trying to be some kind of therapy ninja, like pull whatever you could out of it. And it was it's weird now that I can say that it was fun, because it did not feel fun at the time. It felt intense and like a lot of work, but it was good. It was good times.
Some of the like the origins of like healers that were truly embedded in like a community or even a tribe always fascinates me, because it's like, I don't know, if you're a healer in a tribe, you are just in that community and it's your community. And it's strange because we have this tendency, I think, and some people are obviously more, like you said, more kind of skeptical of this, or they're more boundaried than others, of like, I only exist in this office for my clients, and it's this freak out moment if you see one another. And I think a lot of times clients, they're reading your energy on that, they're reading your like anxiety on that. I remember for my my therapist as a teenager, I would see him all the time, and he worked with my friends and like, my sibling and stuff. And he just handled it like a pro. I mean, it was like, you can make it more awkward by not saying hi or pretending like we don't exist, but he was so embedded in the community, and still is, that it just wasn't really a thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I don't know if you've read anything by Brad Keeney before, but he was one of my supervisors, and he wrote a book called Aesthetics of Change, and he wrote a book called Resource Focused Therapy. But he also did a lot of research into shamanism, and he would go to Africa, and he would spend a bunch of time with shamans, and that kind of healer mentality, and he applied that to therapy. He's a little controversial, and for some people, I mean, he's played drums in therapy before. Like some of the stuff that he did, it feels a little out there, but he was a supervisor at our agency for a few years, while I was working on my dissertation. And so he helped me work through that, and we would talk about the need for more of that type of healing in those contexts, because it was more present and focused in the moment on what the person needed, rather than trying to apply a bunch of interventions. We had a kid one time who he was in jail for a long time for most of his adolescence, and he the big thing he kept getting in trouble for is he would cuss out the guards. He would just cuss them out all the time. And Brad would go in there with us, and we would talk to him about the idea that this was the only reason this kid was getting in trouble. Like, it was the only reason he was getting in trouble in prison, but he would do it all the time. He was almost like uncontrollable. So in talking to him, we realized like this was just an outlet for what he was. He just needed an outlet. He had spent most of his adolescence in prison. He was really tired of it. He was really frustrated in life. And so we had this idea. We taught him how to cuss in German. Like, we just looked up a bunch of German cuss words, and we taught him how to cuss in German. And he didn't get in trouble anymore. Like, they didn't know what he was saying to them. He would say German cuss words under his breath, or he would like say like nobody spoke German there. So but there's just this outlet for him that he needed, and teaching it, like, the idea of for healers and shamans to come in was to figure out a way for them to get what they needed, in given the context that they were a part of. Like, in doing that, we did several things that were in that same vein. We videoed a kid one time for his story, for him to share what he had learned. He was continually going to what they considered the psych ward in prison, and he allowed us. We got his permission, and we came in and we just videotaped him, asking him to share what he had learned. And just in that like act of doing that, he began to he began to see himself differently. Like, he hadn't really made a lot of progress, but when he started talking on video, he started talking about all these changes that he had made and how therapy had helped him. I mean, this kid would barely say anything with me. Wow. During our therapy sessions, but when we shifted the context for him, he began to act and believe and think in a way that was more healed than not. And so, like, that idea, like, of approaching clients like that it's stuck with me. It made a huge impact on me. And thinking in private practice, like, I still try to I still try to act and think in that way, as opposed to like this rigid, stark, like clear separation between therapist and client, that I think sometimes doesn't feel real, and doesn't feel helpful to clients.
Well, and I think part of it is our training, and part of it is, when you come out of a graduate program, you've learned to do therapy a particular way, more or less. And some people come out pretty freaked out about ethics, pretty freaked out about not getting in trouble, or waving to your client on the street or whatever it is. And I understand that.
Me too.
They say it takes 7 years to achieve mastery of any skill. And obviously we can never really master therapy. That's part of why I love it. At the same time, I remember around about 7 years, I was like, oh, now I'm getting the hang of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I can do
it takes time.
Totally off the cuff. And I learned so much from my own therapist. It's unbelievable. It's been my best training, my best preparation. And I had a therapist in San Francisco who the sessions were not time limited.
Yeah.
I don't know how
she
did that.
How she did it? She just went on for however long it took?
Just however long that session took. So sometimes I go in and it'd be 40 minutes and we'd work through something and get to the end of it, and we would that would be it. Other times it'd be an hour and 45 minutes and there'd be someone sitting in the hallway just kind of waiting because they kind of knew the drill. And I was like, wow, what if everyone did that?
Yeah. You're just giving people what they need. Like if they need an hour and a half, they got an hour and a half. Yeah.
Because sometimes, if you give a client 30, sometimes they'll do the work in 30, or an hour and a half or whatever it is. And then sometimes I think, it can feel inorganic to put a lot of limitations on therapy. At the same time, we kind of have to, because we've got to see a certain number of people in a day, or, if we're working with managed care, we've got to work with managed care. But again, the idea of healing should be up to us. And I think in private practice, we have more flexibility to practice how we want to practice within reason. And there's just a lot of ways of helping people.
Yeah. And I think that 7-year thing is a good thing, because I think it takes that long to just kind of unlearn what we've learned in a way. I think you're right. We come out of school with this idea of therapy in a box, this like prepackaged idea. And it's hard for us to think of helping in any other way besides that. And so, but a lot of times I think that keeps us from innovating too. Like, I mean, in some ways we're still doing therapy the way that it's been done since its origins. Yeah. And it's hard. I think there's a lot of resistance from therapists to actually think about what they do in a different way. But I think what that does is that keeps us from innovating. It keeps us from making it better, not just for the client, but for us as well. And it's because we don't, that therapy, I think therapists have just a high burnout rate for what they do, in part because I don't think that it's matching up to who they are. They don't do therapy in a way that feels natural and full and life-giving to who they are as people.
I think it also depends on how you see therapy. Is it more of an art? Is it more of a science?
Oh yeah, man. I love that conversation.
Somewhere very much in between, but
absolutely.
I find that a lot of even, the therapists that I'm drawn to, have done my work with, are probably more in that art. They're more atheoretical. They're more trans-theoretical. They're more off the cuff. Like I've had, therapists like that one in San Francisco just do very untraditional things with me. And that's really, I think where the good work has happened for me, at least. On the other hand, you have some people that want a more textbook approach or a protocoled kind of treatment manual approach. And maybe that, I think that helps for some people. I think on the other hand, it can also be a block for people because they feel like, oh, this isn't, isn't in the textbook. So therapy can't feel too out of control,
Yeah. I think there's some people that really fits their personality. The more the science side really fits who they are, and I think they're successful because it fits with who they are. But I'm the same way. More of my teachers have been more on the artistic side, and so that's where I fall more. And so if I tried to do it from a textbook way, or like it would feel really inauthentic to me. And I think that would come across. Like, I think for people that are just more built that way, have a more engineering type of mind, it works for them, and it's going to work for their clients as well. Um, um, for me, it's been more trying to find, as I've found more of my voice, it's fallen more on
Yeah.
the artistic side there.
We know that ultimately there's a lot of common factors research, right, in terms of what facilitates change regardless of theoretical orientation. And a lot of it's the relationship. And a lot of it's also the therapist's belief that what they're doing is going to help.
Yeah.
And this might be a good segue into the thing I meant to talk to you about today, which is building a business, building a thriving business. But we might just have to do 2 episodes. But I do see a lot of therapists who I think, we can do all the marketing stuff. You can have the coolest website and the cool, you know what I mean? All the digital marketing stuff and this and that. You can have everything set up right. But if you really don't believe in what you're selling and in the way that you're helping people, then it's all going to fall flat,
Yeah. Like that to me is, it takes a long time to kind of get to that space, or at least it did for me, of believing that what I was offering was valuable, and that it was important. And we had this conversation with some of my therapists the other day about, because we were figuring out some prices for some services we were going to offer and the fees and stuff. And, that feeling that, that what we have it should be given away for free, and that it's not impactful, or it should just at least be discounted in a way that doesn't really support the therapist that's selling it in a good way. And I think it's tied to that. It's tied to that just belief in that we have what it takes to be able to help and to heal and to offer something to people that they get their money's worth in it. And that somebody attacked. We're doing a retreat, a marriage retreat here in a few weeks with some other therapists in the area, and had somebody kind of attack us on social media for what we were charging and what we were doing. And it stung for a bit. I really was taken aback, and there were like those immediate thoughts of, is this really worth what we're charging? And then I just had that check, and I've gotten better at it, but it always comes up of like, no, hang on. You're getting this, and this, and this, and these things are valuable that you wouldn't get anywhere else. Yeah. Brad Keeney, the therapist I was telling you about, he used to say to clients, he would say, like, there is no one else in the world like you. Like he would hit that point. He would say it in a bunch of different ways, but it was that idea. And I think that's true for therapists. We often think that there's anywhere that they can go for therapy. And there's a large market in Raleigh for therapists. But I just firmly believe that if you come and see me, or you come see one of my therapists, or whoever you're seeing, you're not seeing that person has something very unique and different that they're offering you that you're not going to get anywhere else. And so that my belief in that, I think, has taken a while to really get there. But once we did, like that's honestly when business took off for us. And for me personally, when people started showing up, was when I started actually believing that I had something of value to offer.
Well, therapists have a astounding way of really oppressing one another, and it's been on my mind a lot more lately, because I hear too many stories like this of, I would raise my fees, but I'm afraid of what the therapist next door might say or has already said, in your case. And I think a lot of it's projection. I think it's usually a discomfort that they have about themselves or their own fees or whatever. And I think it's jealousy. So I think, we have to step back like you did and go, okay, that stings. Why does it sting? What's coming up for this person? What's coming up for me? And is this something I should actually change what I'm going to do over, right? Because that's the real decision is, if one person tells you, hey, this is, you're charging too much, or what gives you the right to charge this much? The mistake that a lot of people make is they go, well, then I should definitely, change it.
Yeah.
Versus, and again, and it's like, I've been stuck on this idea for a while now, but until you have 30 people telling you you're charging too much,
Yeah.
I don't want you to change. Like, don't budge.
Yeah.
It's not statistical significance.
Do you think, as I've been, the more I think about that, do you think that that's about money, or is that about our hangups on money, or do you think that's something else? Because I used to think it was my own hangup about money, around money issue, because I just wasn't taught well about money. And I used to think that that wasn't, if I was making money, that I was doing it wrong, that I wasn't being true to the calling of helping. But the more I think about it, the more I think it has, at least for me, it has more to do with the value I see in myself, and the thought that I have what it takes to actually do something well. Like that I have there's, to me, like the idea of whether I get to call myself an expert in something, is like I have this resistance to calling myself a relationship expert. But when I look at Gladwell's 10,000 hours, I have that. I have experience. I have degrees. I have proof. Like, there's all of these things that I have that I discount, and so I don't want to put I don't often want to put myself in that role. And I think then I don't charge for what it's actually worth.
It's a way to deal with dissonance.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hidden dissonance of you're behaving like an expert, but the belief of being an expert hasn't yet caught up. I was talking to someone recently who is becoming a business coach, and it was the same exact thing for this person. They had already started doing business coaching, and then they were getting, kind of bit in the ass by this imposter syndrome, or this feeling of like, what gives me the right? Or someone else had said, what gives you the right to teach someone about business? Well, because I'm already doing it, and I have something to offer, and people are paying for it, and that's how people become experts. So I do think like imposter syndrome is it's a factor at any stage of the game, and we have to keep working through it. And really, you just continue with the behavior, and the belief will eventually catch up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think belief creates its own proof in that kind of way.
Exactly.
For a lot of things. And if we don't start with that, we don't have that. We don't see the proof that's all around us. We don't start with that belief that and keep moving forward. It's going to be really difficult in that sense. I think to see that.
People in any system or any group don't want any one person to exceed too far. They don't want any one person to grow too far or elevate themselves too much. And so naturally, people challenge that person or bring that person back down. This happens in nature. This happens with animals. And so I think it happens with us too. We have an emotional reaction to it because it feels personal. It can get personal. And ultimately we're going, hey, well, I'm just trying to figure out my business, or hey, my clients haven't said this is too expensive, but therapists are telling me that it is. So should I do something about it?
Yeah. I have a hard time. I think I read too many, there's too many voices a lot of times in my head from other people or from stuff I'm reading. So, I mean, social media is the worst about that. Yeah. There's, in some ways, I have to unfollow people that I'm trying to either I feel like are where I want to go, because every time I don't see what they're doing the same things I'm doing. I've just come to believe they're doing exactly the same things I'm doing. Yep. They're going through the exact same emotions and feelings that I'm going through. The more I talk to people that do this, the more we all have such similar experiences in it. And so having even that comparison factor to other people is it's strong. I just want to compare myself to everybody else that's already doing it, and then go, well, I don't have what they have, or they're already doing what I would do, or I don't have anything unique to offer. And so it makes me stop when I should press forward and continue doing what we talked about, what I'm already doing.
Well, the
It's
irony
strong.
is that people, we don't check those beliefs against reality. And the irony is that I guarantee people have that same exact belief about you.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
they look at you and they go, man, Adam's got it all together, and he's doing the speaking thing, and he's got this podcast, and if only I could get that, if only I could get there. And
Oh man.
we don't see that. I don't know what that is. I don't know a quick
There's
way
a
to work through that.
this may be too nerdy, but I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan.
I'm not, but I can appreciate it. I'm a fan of a lot of other nerdy things.
Okay.
So go for it.
Well, there's a part where like the Frodo and Sam are taking the ring to Mordor, and they're in the books there's this moment where they're talking about the idea of heroes, and they talk about that heroes never recognize when they're in the story.
Right.
Like they talk about this idea that the hero of the story is in it and just doing the same things that they're doing,
That's right.
but they don't recognize themselves as being heroic at that time. And I think it's the same thing for people that are successful at what they do. They're in it and they're just living that story. They're fully present on, what do I have to do next? What am I doing? And it's the look back that gives you the hero's perspective or the success perspective. It's not in the trenches and the day-to-day moments and the hard parts, right, and all of that. And so it's hard. It's really hard to see. It's hard to see yourself in that. You start to see yourself in that role, and it's hard to see. It's hard to see it without the cumulative work of looking back. But if you're in it, if it's hard, if you're being present, if you're showing up every day, to me that's the thing that makes that. You're in that success story. You just may not know it yet.
Well, and it's the hero in that story, or in any story, is just trying to get to the next level. They're just trying to complete the mission.
Yeah.
And I think that's what all of us are doing. And so on one hand, we don't want to be too driven by fear. That's not a good fuel. On the other hand, having some of that fear or even some of that comparison is part of your fuel. It's part of our fuel of I've never really arrived, and therefore I need to keep grinding. I need to really stay steadfast and keep pushing forward. Because the other thing is, I bet you know this guy Donald Miller.
Yeah.
So Donald Miller, and I've been reading Donald Miller since way before Story Brand.
Yeah, me too.
And,
yeah.
I got to meet him actually years ago, and he was speaking at my college and stuff. So he was just that writer to me at the time. But he said, you should aim to peak when you're like 65.
Well, that's so good. Yeah.
And to think of it that way,
that.
You can look at yourself and go, well, in that case, I'm right on track.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a lot more growth to do. And he was looking at his trajectory, and what's interesting is, he was, in my view, a successful novelist, for most of his career, up until the point where he became a marketer. He became a copywriting, expert, and has kept going up this trajectory. And I just think that's amazing. And I think he's living that in a way. Like, he is really capitalizing on what he's learned. And on the other hand, I've known people, like, especially when I lived in the Bay Area, who had been too successful early on, and had made a bunch of money, had some success. It was tech people at the time, startup people. Yeah. And there was a real emptiness to a lot of those people. There was a real now what, because they had accomplished their mission so fast that they weren't on a journey anymore, and they were going, oh crap, I need to kind of create a different journey for me now, because it's never going to be that good. I'm never going to get back to like founding MySpace or whatever it is. And I'm sorry, Tom from MySpace is listening, but that
sure
guy's
I heard
probably
he was a fan.
that guy's probably having a hard time going, I'll never get back to MySpace. And granted, it's a dead product. It's still the fact of like, I think it's hard to where do you go from there? So as a therapist in private practice, you never really arrive, and that's And if you embrace that, then all of the struggle that you're in is going to feel normal. It's going to feel like, oh yeah. Or like, again, doing the agency work, working in the hospital, like it was all part of you getting to here, and your current struggles are part of you getting to the next place.
Yeah. But you said something there too that's really important that you've helped me kind of zero in on several occasions and kept in front of me, is the idea of what is the mission?
Right.
Like, and
Right.
if the mission is what you're doing on mission, is your vision for the future. And if your vision can take that long-term approach and you can see it that way, then you know what it so helps make things. It clarifies the clutter, right? It gets what is clutter and what is essential, and kind of helps you zero in and focus in that way. And I think that has that keeps you in that. And if your vision is too small, right? Like then it is that short term, or if it's too circumstance based, right? Or where you're just trying to achieve one thing, or if you're not, recasting that all the time as you go and expanding that and making that something that a future that you want to live into. To me, that is such a that becomes powerful in that way that you're talking about, because you can start to see yourself at 65. You can start to see where that's going and where that's going to be, and the struggles of it become momentary. They're not forever struggles. They are struggles they feel like they're going to last forever, but they're when you can take that long-term view and know what your vision is, what your mission is, then you can weather them a whole lot better, I think.
I think you're right. And it's the same way, if you see a therapy client really struggling with something and you can kind of see their future for them, you know what I mean? Like going through a really bad breakup and feeling like my life is over, right? Or like a teenager feeling like I'll never find love again. And you can't tell them that they will.
But yeah, you can't guarantee that for them.
You can't guarantee that in the moment, because it feels real and it feels like, how do you know? But to help guide them through the pain points of that breakup is what eventually helps them find resolve and helps them move through that and eventually be okay. And I think it's the same for businesses, and in the work I do with therapists, is a lot of times I can see where things are going right over the next little while for the folks I work with. And part of my job is to help folks get through what's happening now, and trust that the future is going to be good. It's going to be good if you stay persistent, you stay steadfast, you put in the work. And I can see things, but sometimes I have to resist my tendency to just go, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because
you can't see it.
Know?
Yeah, that's right. How do you know that it's going to be okay? Yeah, man, that's good, dude. I think that's being able to do that. It's slow and it's steady, but it's like just staying in it. Like I think people jump out way too fast of those pain points. Like you have to go through those pain points to be able to get to the other side, as you're saying. And being able, sometimes the job as a therapist is just to keep them in that, reassure them that they can handle whatever the difficulty is. It's not beyond them. It's like it's not gonna. It feels like it's gonna crush you. I think whether it's the things you go through personally or the things you go through with a business, like it can feel like it's going to destroy you and take everything. But I'm just a big believer that people have the ability to stay in that and to weather that, and to that they have what it takes to be able to be successful in that. And sometimes that just takes some reminding, not that it's going to be all going to be okay, but that they have what it takes to get through whatever it is they're dealing with.
Well, there's moments where we have to grab that person by the wrist and go, I don't know, if this same teenage client won't stop texting the ex-boyfriend, there's moments where I think we have to go, quit doing that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's making things worse. That's making you worse. So I think sometimes therapists are afraid to just give that advice. It's a dreaded word, but luckily as a business coach, I can give advice freely with no
Yeah. Yeah.
with no guilt.
Yeah.
But
I think,
yeah,
yeah. I think sometimes for me, it's like you're way better than that. That's not who you are. Like
yeah,
you're not the desperate person that's continues to text your boyfriend. That's not. I think a lot of times it's us being able to see through, get through all the voices that the ones we talked about. This
right.
there are the negative ones. Like get through all of that and remind them of who that person is at the core. Whether it's professionally or personally, like you have good things about you, and I think we all need to be reminded about those things multiple times. And sometimes therapy is just a great way to do that. It's something that they'll listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, if the relationship is good.
Man, well, I asked none of my questions.
That's the best kind of podcast, though, right?
Laura's going to be really annoyed. She's going to be like, well, why did we write them? And I'll be like, I don't know. I have no idea. Adam had too many interesting Lord of the Rings references to talk about. So
yeah, if you want to do an all Lord of the Rings podcast, I would be there. I would be there in a second.
Talk about a niche audience. I bet there's some nerds who listen to this podcast. I'm saying nerds lovingly.
Yeah.
Well,
as a fellow nerd,
I really am going to have you back on to talk about
awesome.
the business stuff, which is how did you go from where you were to where you are now in your business. So we're just going to have to do that another time, and we're going to have to be really diligent.
I'd love to.
We'll make it happen. Adam, tell folks a little bit about how they can get in touch with you and find out more.
Yeah, so our website for practice is MathewsCounseling.net. Got blogs, videos, contact. Mathews with one T, that's right. Mathews, counseling.net. And then the podcast is foreplayrst.com, or they can find it under Foreplay in iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere podcast or downloaded or sold. You can get us that way.
Perfect. Easy enough. We'll put the links in the show notes. And Adam, thanks again for doing this, man. This is a lot of fun, and I look forward to having you back on soon.
Yeah, I loved it, John. Thanks.